2016 has been a really horribly rotten, no good, yucky year. There have been so many changes this year that I feel like I honestly could not take one more change. Just when I thought that all of the change that was going to happen for 2016 was done, on December 22nd of this year, unbeknownst to either Jason or myself, and without really any warning, we lost our Sophie girl. For those of you who are unable to have children, like my husband and I, we are unable to have children. Our dogs became our children. And I guess I have to back up a little bit. When I first started doing YouTube, my husband and I had two chihuahuas, two long-haired chihuahuas, and they were the love of our lives. They were our babies. We spoiled them rotten. They were with us all the time, and they were such a big part of our lives. Faye was the older of the two. She was about a year older than Sophie was, and she was born deaf. Faye and I were inseparable. She was my favorite dog I've ever, I never really grew up with dogs. I didn't really have animals. She was the sweetest, most wonderful little chihuahua you've ever met. She was a little fat, roly-poly, double coat, long-haired chihuahua. So she was just a little puffball. From the very beginning, she was just a little puffball of fur. So Faye was my girl, and she was born with a lot of birth defects, and she was the runt of the litter, and my mother-in-law thought she'd have to put her down to basically save her from a life of pain. My sister-in-law, God bless her, decided that could not happen on her watch, and so she took this sweet little Faye puppy dog to everywhere and basically nursed her to health. And not only did Faye survive, Faye thrived. Faye was a very happy little puppy. And my sister-in-law went into the Army, and when she went to the Army, she asked if I'd be willing to take Faye, and I was, of course, ecstatic. Yes, of course I would take Faye. She was absolutely my temperament. She was very quiet. Faye was born deaf. So unlike a stereotypical Chihuahua, she didn't really bark. She didn't really make a lot of noise. Yeah, she was just the sweetest, quietest little dog. She was a little fat little roly-poly thing, which I really related to myself being a fat little roly-poly thing. And I just loved Faye. Faye was my buddy. And I read a lot back then. I read a lot. And so I would come home from work, and the very first thing I would do is, I do all the chores I need to do, but really, I was really looking forward to picking up whatever book I was into, and I would read. And Faye was my reading buddy. She would sit next to me the entire time and keep me company. And as long as I would remember to pet her, which I have a tendency to mindlessly touch things anyways, I could sit there and consciously pet her while I was reading a book, and we were just so happy that way. Well, Chihuahuas are pack dogs, and I knew that Faye was going to need a little friend. So we went to my mother-in-law, and she let us pick another puppy from one of her litters. This was about a year later. We picked Sophie. She was all white, which is I had never seen an all white Chihuahua. I didn't know how rare that was until after the fact. But we chose Sophie. And Sophie, unlike Faye, was a little spaz. She just ran around like a crazy dog. And she'd run around and she'd want to play all the time, and she instantly became Jason's friend, Jason's buddy. And I don't know if you know this, but Chihuahuas have a tendency to pick their owner. They pick their person. And it's almost like you don't pick your Chihuahua, the Chihuahua picks you. And Faye chose me and Sophie chose Jason. And that was perfectly great because I like to sit and read a lot, and Jason has a terrible time sitting down ever. He wants to go, play. And so Sophie was a great puppy for him, and Faye was an awesome puppy for me. Well, of October 2015, 5 days after my birthday, we lost Faye. Faye passed away. Now Faye, because of her birth and because of some of the defects she had, she's kind of always had a little bit of a rough go of things. And when she died, I was very thankful that it happened very quickly. It happened all in one day. We kind of knew she was slowing down. She was getting tired. She had been for months. We had to pick her up to get her on anything. She couldn't jump any longer, couldn't climb stairs. And all of that was fine. The vet kept saying, no, she's fine. She just has arthritis. She's okay. We had her on medication and fed her a special diet. And she died. So she was gone. Now, the way that it worked was Faye and Sophie stayed home every day, and we would gate them off in a section of the house. So they had free reign of the house, and they had access to outside, and they always had food and water, and they could pretty much do whatever they wanted. When Faye died, we realized we couldn't leave Sophie at home, but Sophie, by this point, was starting to get a little bit older. She wasn't always very nice to other dogs. She didn't seem to get along really well with all dogs. She does with some, but not all dogs. So instead of trying to find her a new pal, we decided that we would figure out how to take Sophie with us wherever we went. So very instantly, she became Jason's truck dog, what Jason would call his truck dog. And she would be this tiny, tiny chihuahua who would basically reside with Jason, this gigantic, humongous bear of a man, and would go everywhere with him. And, you know, it became the joke that she was the foreman, so I had gotten her last Christmas a little puff jacket that says foreman across the back of it, and Jason just adored that coat. And it was awesome because she really would follow him around on their job sites, you know, checking everything out, talk to her, whatever. But she really was with us 24/7. We never ever didn't have Sophie with us. It was very rare. And we pretty much stopped doing anything that would not allow her to let us keep her with us. So we tried to go to the movies once, you know, got a sitter, which, you know, out loud sounds really crazy, but we went to the movies, got a sitter, and that didn't really work so well for us because I was constantly worried about her. Then I found out I was losing my job. I knew that when I lost my job that eventually she would be with me 24/7, which was totally fine, especially with the move to Portland. She was like the best thing that happened to me. Like, I couldn't have had her with me 24/7 at a more perfect time because I've spent a lot of time in Portland by myself. That's changing. I'm starting to create this social circle of friends and family who I'm hanging out with quite often, and so that's been really good. But in the very beginning, when I first moved up here, there really was no one to talk to except for Jason, and Jason works a lot. So Sophie would keep me company, so much so that I felt like, oh my gosh, I need a break. I can't even pee without her following me. And we have hardwood floors all throughout our new house, and I would hear her little paws chickening on the floor, and her little collar constantly jingling. So she was always with me. She's my little shadow, followed me everywhere. I would have conversations with her. I would ask her, do you think this furniture fits here? Or do you think it should go over here? Do you think I should put this artwork here, or should I put it over here? Or, you know, different things like that. She too was slowing down, but it was a little different than Faye. Faye kind of deteriorated slowly because she was born with some problems, so it wasn't quite as easy to see. Sophie, on the other hand, just started getting really tired. She was still playing, but she wasn't playing all the time. She was a little bit quieter, could sit for longer periods of time. She'd kind of get upset at me if I wouldn't hold still long enough. That's been a huge change since moving to Portland. I don't read a lot anymore. I don't sit a lot anymore. I don't hang out at the house a lot anymore. But what I'm trying to say is that we lost our Sophie girl this year. It was a huge shock to both Jason and myself. The night before, Jason, myself, and Sophie were all on the floor on our hands and knees and just playing. She was just chasing us, and we were giggling, and that night we had chicken, which was Sophie's favorite thing in the whole wide world to eat. And because she was so tiny, we had a hard time keeping weight on her. We would always share our chicken with her, you know, we'd always share some of those things with her. And she had had chicken the night before, and she was right in Papa's face saying, hey, where's my chicken? What about me? Don't forget me. Look how little I am. Don't you feel bad for me? Give me some food. And it was just, everything was hunky-dory. Everything seemed really normal. The only thing that was a little different was there was a couple of nights before she passed away where she was kind of coughing. And I didn't know that's what coughing sounded like with a dog. I've never really heard a dog cough before. I never really thought about it. But it sounded more like she was trying to clear something out of her throat. That's what it sounded like. And so Jason thought that maybe she had a hairball. That sometimes dogs can get a hairball, especially long-haired chihuahuas, and they usually take care of it by themselves, but sometimes they can't. Sometimes they need to get some help. Well, the night before she passed away, that night, I went to bed early. I had a day of interviews, literally, like from 8 a.m. to noon. I had a whole array of interviews set up at one of the organizations I'm trying to get on. And so that's really what I was focusing on. Sophie was kind of up all night making this coughing noise, which now I know it's a coughing noise. And I just kind of I would check on her and kind of pet her, say, hey, it's okay, baby, it's all right. She'd kind of calm down and lay down. And then a couple hours later, she'd be up doing it again, blah, blah, blah. So the next morning we got up, and Jason, we had already arranged that Jason would take me to my interview. Primarily it was so I wouldn't get lost, and then secondarily it was because he really wanted to know how the interviews went, so he wanted to be able to pick me up, and we would go to lunch and make this big deal out of it, and you know, how did it go, blah, blah, blah. And he would have Sophie with him all day. So that worked out great. So he dropped me off at my interviews. Interviews went fine. Jason came and picked me up, and I got in the truck. I was in his work truck. I got to his truck, and Sophie wasn't sitting right. She looked like she was having some problems breathing. And I was like, Jay, why is she sitting like that? And he looked at her, and she stopped. She stopped doing it as soon as he went to look at her. And he's like, no, she's fine. She's been fine all morning. She's great, whatever. And so I said, okay, that's fine. So we started talking about the interviews and how it was going. But I'm still kind of like keeping my eye on Sophie because something's not right. I just feel like something's not right. So she started doing it again. And what she was doing is she was sitting, you know, and with her head jutted forward. And she had her neck stretched out. And she looked like she was trying to breathe and was having some troubles. And I said, Jay, look, she's doing it again. And he's like, oh, that's not good. Call the veterinarian. Well, we didn't have a vet. We have a vet in Salem, but we don't have one in Portland. We just moved here. So I started calling around, and because we haven't established ourselves with a veterinarian anywhere, no one was willing to look at her. And now I'm getting really concerned because she's not like popping back to her normal self. She's still looking like she's having problems breathing, and breathing is essential, so I knew that this was big. We didn't want to like let this go. Blah, blah, blah. We ended up stopping in a veterinarian's office, and they said, we can't help you. She needs emergent care. Go to this veterinarian hospital. So that's what we did. We took her to the veterinarian hospital. It was only about 13 minutes away, but it felt like a forever drive because Sophie was just not doing very well. Now, somewhere in the middle of all that, we had brought Sophie home really quick, and I can't remember what for. We had to stop to get something, and we were gonna go back out again and get to the vet. And I thought, well, maybe if she's got like this hair pull or whatever, then I will let her go in the house and take a drink of water. Maybe that'll help. Well, I set her down at the front door. I carried her to the house, set her down at the front door. She walked a couple steps and collapsed. And then that's when we knew this was an emergency. This was more than her just having troubles breathing, because, you know, it wasn't like she couldn't breathe. She just looked like she was kind of wheezing a little bit. So we scooped her up, got her into the car, got her to the hospital, and blah, 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 blah. The vet told us she was having heart failure and that her valves in her heart weren't pumping blood correctly, and so that little cough that she had was not her coughing necessarily. She was essentially drowning on the blood that was backflowing. That's horrific. That's so terrible. They said we have some options, but because of her age, and they said she had a really bad heart murmur, and a heart murmur is, for my bad understanding, but a heart murmur is your heart is supposed to go lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. And if you have a heart murmur, that means there's something wrong with the flow of your blood, and you'll get a lub whoosh lub, lub whoosh lub. And that means something's not right. And because of her age and because of the severity of this whooshing sound they heard in her heart, they didn't think that it was probably going to do any good for us to like do any medically to intervene. So Jason and I made the hard decision to let our little Sophie girl go. We didn't want her to die in pain. We didn't want her to live in any kind of suffering at all. It was a bad day. It was a really hard day. Jason kept me with him the whole rest of the day. He wouldn't let me leave him, which I was totally glad about because I didn't think I wanted to leave him either. I pretty much stayed with Jason the whole time. I didn't want to come home. I didn't want to deal with anything in real life because I just kept thinking, sweet Lord, like what else? Like what else could possibly happen? Like this is the absolute worst timing. You know, I get it, but how much lower can somebody sink? And we chose to have her cremated. We also chose, they offer free service where they will provide to you paw prints and a little lock of her hair. So we did opt to do those as well. We just received her ashes yesterday, so I'm very thankful about that. The hospital that we went to, I can't even think of the name of it, but the hospital that we went to was so loving and so gracious and so amazing with her. They had never met Sophie before, and they were just so sweet, and they kept calling her by her name, and they kept saying she. And when Faye died, the hospital that we were at for her, that was not the case. See, Faye had died before we had gotten there, and they had done something called a pitch test, which I had never heard of. and they said that basically we got there in the middle of the night. The lady was very young. I don't think she had a lot of experience. We came in, Faye had died on the way. Jason was holding her. And she said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "Well, I think Jason did all the talking, and I don't think I was talking at all." And Jason said, our dog has died. And she says, "What do you want me to do about it?" And I looked at Jason like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? This is such a nightmare. And he says, "Well, what do you do when a dog passes away? What do you do?" And she says, well, then she gave us her options, blah, blah, blah. And she said, but before she took Faye away, she said, "Now this might be a little traumatic for you, but if she's dead, then she won't feel this at all." And she proceeded to put her fingers in the middle of Faye's pads in her paw and pinched really hard. I was mortified because at this point I know Faye's dead. I'm not stupid. I'm not new. I'm an optimist and I try to look at the bright side of everything, but I'm not stupid. So I know Faye's not there, and I know that Faye can't feel it, but that's still my dog that you're doing that to. Like, I don't want to see you do that. So it was just very cold and unfeeling and very uncaring. And she started to refer to Faye as it, and that really bothered me a lot. I kept saying, "Her name is Faye, she's a girl. Her name is Faye, she's a girl." That all by itself was traumatic. That was over a year ago, and I'm still not a-okay with all of that. She was like the sweetest, best dog we could have ever had. Well, Miss Sophie Girl's experience was totally different. At least our experience, Sophie Girl's not there, but my experience with Sophie Girl was so much different than the last one with Faye, because this hospital was so sweet with her. Sophie had died. Now, the way that it was going to work is Sophie needed to stay on oxygen. And they were very concerned about taking her off of oxygen to bring her to us so she can stay with us. Because normally what I don't know, but I think normally what would happen is they would put you in a room with your puppy and they would basically give her the shot and she would basically fall asleep and she'd pass away in your arms. Well, they were concerned about doing that because she was under so much duress from not being able to breathe that they were concerned about taking her off of oxygen. And the room that they would normally take you to was not set up to handle that, to handle the oxygen. So what they said was they would take her off of oxygen and let us hold her as long as she was not in any visible duress. And that we would say goodbye to her and they would come in and give us like an anesthetic kind of a shot to basically make Sophie not aware of the fact that you're about to take her away from us. And then they would take her in the back and do the euthanization, and it would be humane. And so I held Sophie and Jason held Sophie. She was okay, she was kind of laying there and she wasn't looking too great. And it was the absolute sweetest thing in the whole wide world. Jason's holding her. And my husband is huge, especially in comparison to this tiny little chihuahua. His one hand can hold her entire body just with his hand. And so he's holding her with one hand and he's petting her with the other hand. And they have just given her the anesthetic and she's fighting it. She doesn't want to lay down. She doesn't want to stop looking at Papa. And Jason is basically petting her saying, "It's okay, honey. Just fall asleep. Papa's here. We love you." It was actually really quite beautiful. And the doctor's standing in the room and she's watching and she's making sure that Sophie's okay. And then instead of taking her into the back room to euthanize her, Sophie dies in Jason's arms. It was just, there was something so peaceful about it and so heartbreaking, but it was still so sweet. The tech who was also in the room stepped forward and we had Sophie in a blanket because that was what she loved the most, was being cuddled in blankets, especially when she got older. So she was wrapped in a blanket and the tech asked if she can take her and Jason said yes, and handed her over to the tech, and the tech kind of swaddled her up a little bit and started rocking her while she was talking to us. Now I know, looking back, that Sophie wasn't there. She had, her little spirit already left her body. But it was the sweetest, most generous thing that this tech, who I can't even remember what she looks like, let alone what her name was, that she was willing to sit there and rock our little Sophie girl for us. Knowing that that motion that she was doing was not for Sophie, but it was for us. And she called Sophie the whole time, and she called her she, and referred to her as if she was still alive. It was just those little tiny things that made this horrible, horrible, yucky, rotten, no good day, it made it so much more bearable. And to you, whoever you are, sweet tech, I may never see you again. You may never see me. And you may not know this, but the job that you do is so miraculous. And that bit of generosity and love and compassion that you show to the owners of these sweet little babies that come into your world and pass, I will forever be grateful for you. I don't remember your name. I don't remember what you look like. I was so emotionally focused on Sophie and Jason and trying to make sure I was keeping it together. But whoever you are, I just need you to know that I absolutely love you. Like, you are an angel, and the work that you do is so huge. It's so bigger, it's so much bigger than I know, than you can possibly even know. But being one of those puppy owners, I have to tell you, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I don't wish to lose another dog. I don't wish to go through this all over again. But I pray that if I do have this happen again, and we have to deal with this, that I am able to come across a place like this hospital again, and I'm able to come across a person like you who has a heart that's as big as your whole self. Because the one thing I do remember about you is that you were tiny. And looking back, I think that your heart had to envelop your whole entire body for as big as it was and for as loving as your actions were. I really appreciate you. I wanted to tell you about Sophie because she's always with me. She's been in all these videos. She's been in most of my videos. I talk about her a lot. I reference her a lot. I show her a lot. And she's not going to be there now. I'm trying to circumnavigate all of the questions I know that are going to come. And they're going to be coming for a long time. Where's Sophie? What happened to Sophie? Where's Sophie? Sophie was an old girl. She was 15 years old. She was a long-haired Chihuahua, the sweetest little puppy to Jason and myself. She was raised by Faye, who was deaf, because Faye was deaf. Sophie was then also very, very quiet as well. People used to be very astonished that Faye and Sophie really didn't make a lot of noise. They didn't really bark like Chihuahuas typically do. And for being someone like myself who's very hypersensitive, and I get very overwhelmed by sensations, noise, sight, smell, taste. I get overwhelmed rather easily, energy. Because of that, it was very awesome to have quiet dogs. Now, Jason and I, we've had dogs for 17 years of our marriage, maybe 18 years of our marriage. So we don't really know what it's like to be dogless. We've been together for 21 years. So we have decided that we are going to hold off getting another dog. We really just need to wait. We just need to hold off. We need to take our time. I need to make sure that I know what my work life is going to look like. I think that's going to matter what kind of dog we get. It will also help us decide like what type of care our dog is going to need. I don't want to get a new puppy and not be able to like give it the time and the attention and the love that it deserves right from the get-go. So for now, my house is going to remain very quiet. There will be no chickering on my floor anymore. There's been a couple times since she's passed away that I have gone and gotten her collar and I have just ching-a-ling-a-linged it because it makes me feel better to hear that little noise. Yeah, life is different. Jason and I've had to do a lot of like on purpose building different habits in to make up for the fact that we have this little hole in our family life now. It's gonna be one of those things that's been painful for a long time. I don't think that it is ever really gonna go away. I know even for Faye, who's been gone a little more than a year, that pain hasn't gone away. It's just we're able to look at the situation with more gratitude, thankfulness for these two beautiful puppies that we had in our lives for so long, and how much joy they brought to us, and hopefully how much joy we brought to them. So the good thing I could say about Sophie is that she lived a really good life, a really long, good life. She was spoiled. Trust me, she was spoiled. And I very, very happily spoiled her, and I would do it again. She was a very good girl. She was a sweetheart. She was a lover. She was a snuggler. If you would just sit and pet her for a couple minutes, she was your best friend for life, and she'd make sure that you knew it. She was also a little begging kind of a dog. She always wanted your food. She was always right there, but she was a really well-behaved dog. She knew she wasn't allowed to be on our laps when we were eating, although she really wanted to be because that's where the food was gonna fall. So anyways, I'm just thankful. I'm thankful for her. I'm thankful for both of my dogs that we had. I'm thankful that we had them in our lives. But I really just needed to tell you because I don't want to answer a bunch of questions in the future. I don't